Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Charlotte Mason Show. I'm your host, Julie Ross, and I'm here today with the beautiful Leah Bowden from Modern Miss Mason. Thank you so much for joining us today, Leah.
Thanks for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Julie.
Yes, I just love you. And I've been a huge fan of yours since your Periscope days. Remember those? Way back when?
I really do.
Yeah. And I found you, and you were such a bright light and voice in the Charlotte Mason space. And you were so encouraging. And I just loved your message of this is doable. You can do it. You don't have to do all the things. And, you know, that there's this beautiful way to educate your children. You just painted such a lovely picture of it that was inspiring. So, and you've continued to be that voice since then. So thank you for the work that you do and the influence that you had on my life, but also the Charlotte Mason community as a whole.
Thank you.
Yes. And so today we're here to talk about your book, which I am so excited because this is so needed. So I'm going to hold it up for those of you who are watching it on the YouTube channel. Yay. So Modern Miss Mason, and that's easy because that's the name of your social media and everything too. So it's easy to find.
Very easy.
And I love this book. You know, I think everyone's kind of gateway into Charlotte Mason has been For the Children's Sake, which is absolutely incredible. And I read that back when I was a public school teacher, and that inspired me to homeschool my own children and provide this style of education. It gives such a lovely picture of Charlotte Mason education as opposed to traditional education, but it's greatly lacking, I feel like, in practicality of what do I actually do come Monday morning? It's very inspiring.
Yeah.
But how to actually homeschool all these kids. So I feel like you combined that inspiration that I found in For the Children's Sake, and you put that into your book and brought it up to date with kind of modern research and modern stories and modern, you know, celebrities and things, which I found really amusing. But you also made it really practical. So thank you. That is a huge accomplishment and much needed in the space as well. So I'd love to hear from you. What inspired you to want to take on the big project of writing a book?
I think it was kind of a continuation of the work that I've been doing since the Periscope days, which was to share the freedom that I found within a philosophy. And that has always been my message. That has always been my intention, is to kind of help others to see what I found and how we've learned to implement her ideas, Charlotte Mason's ideas, in the 21st century. And, you know, way back then, Julie, in the Periscope days, when I first, and then I was probably, I don't know, 6-7 years into my journey then, but very early on when I first discovered Charlotte Mason, we didn't have social media. We didn't have all these voices saying, this is how you should do it. I had these 6 pink books, and I had Karen Andriola's beautiful companion, and I found Lynn Seddon, my fellow Brit. Eventually I found her. I was like, oh, we can talk. And so all I had to go on was the original teachings of Charlotte Mason. And even that was like trying to figure that out. What did she actually mean? And so I was reading and doing and trying to implement. And then I started to share. Now, this is before you had 1,000 voices from everywhere saying, even in all the good stuff. I mean, you know, I love social media. It's fantastic when it's used well, but even when it's all good, the loudness, the cacophony of voices saying that this is how you should do it can be really overwhelming, especially if you're new to homeschooling, especially if you're new to the Charlotte Mason philosophy. And because people are taking more from that, there's often a limited understanding of the philosophy, and people are trying to rush into doing stuff without really fully feeling I talk in the introduction about this word called nafas, which is just this sort of knowing it, learning about it, living it, that it becomes a part of you. And you'll have to read the introduction to understand that. But so here I am on this journey. I've been sharing this like growing community here in the UK and across the world, really. And you know, you start to hear the stories of people on the verge of like burnout and just giving up, and it's too much, and it's this, and this. And I realized that no matter how big your platform is, there's always a limited capacity to the message that you want to get out there. And I was at a time where I was speaking more and meeting people who had been publishing books. And, the conversation started to come around, are you thinking about writing a book? I want you to meet my agent. You should do this, and those kind of connective conversations started to happen. And I thought, well, you know what? It's been a while. I'm in my late 40s now. Maybe I'm ready to start to say something about this in a more permanent form. Everything you put out there, even YouTube workshops, whatever, you can delete it if you want to. Put a book out there. I was never
no pressure.
And I was never going to rush into it. And I don't think people should rush into it. But it was a really important project. So, really there was favor and opportunity to be able to step into this. And so I began the process of like so much, what do I want to, how do we help people find their freedom within the Charlotte Mason philosophy in the 21st century? In 200 pages. How do you do that? So a lot of work, a lot of refining, a lot of editing, a lot of prayer, a lot of really focusing on what is important, but also from the women that I'm working with in my coaching and my courses and all that, what I'm hearing from them, the familiar questions and the familiar struggles, trying to bring some understanding through. So that was a really long answer to your first question, but really, it wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't a decision of, ooh, this would be a nice thing for my, for my platform, or to gain more this, that, and the other. It was very much is how do we get this message of freedom out to more people? And a book can do that. And the opportunity came. And so I took it. Took a few years, but it's here. And I'm so grateful, so utterly grateful.
Yes. And I'm so proud of you. And I cannot imagine, as I read it, I thought multiple times, I can't imagine how much work this took. I can't imagine how much work this took. Like sometimes just taking all this, and all of your experiences, and then kind of going, what do I want to keep? What do I want to go? What's the main things that we need to focus? Like a person who's completely new. What are they? I mean, I just can't imagine.
I know
all that work.
And sometimes I would read a whole book, like a huge book on some kind of research or a PhD paper or something, and then you'd pull out one sentence like. And that's just writing. I mean, that's what you do. But that one sentence can encapsulate something that actually really helps somebody's understanding of a method, a philosophy, a principle, whatever. So that is the work, and it is a privilege. But it does take time. Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time. Like I said, it really is. I feel like this book really fills a big need, which is for that inspiration and encouragement with also, how do I actually practically do this? So, each chapter kind of lays some key Charlotte Mason principles, but then you have this section at the end of each chapter, which I love.
The Mason moment.
Yes. Take a Mason moment with just little suggestions on how to do it. And it's so great for people who are like, I kind of say like dipping your toes into the water. Right. This is different. This isn't how I learned. This isn't how my neighbor's homeschooling. What's going on with the Charlotte Mason person? Like, you can just kind of take these little baby steps,
right?
As opposed to, here's the whole philosophy and you need to do X, Y, Z. And then it's like so completely overwhelming that you're like, I don't even know where to start. Like, this is so, I just see it as such a gift. And I'm like you, I go around speaking, I'm talking to people all the time, and they're like, I don't even know where to start.
Right.
And so this just gives them a really practical kind of blueprint. So thank you for including that. That was just brilliant. I love the subtitle. It says, discover how Charlotte Mason's revolutionary ideas on home education can change how you and your children learn and grow together. So why do you call her ideas revolutionary? I love that you use that word.
Yeah, I mean, here we are. We're in the month of her centenary. She's been gone from this earth for 100 years. And, Yes, here we are. You and I are sat here as 21st century women talking about her philosophy and how it's impacted not only our families, but the families we get to work with. And that is amazing, because so many ideas run through history, but they're often inspirational. But yet her ideas are transformational. They do something. If we are willing to take them on board and try them, they actually do impact the way our children can learn, not just for their school years, but forevermore. And as a mother, her ideas around learning and staying intellectually alive have been transformational. So she was revolutionary in her time, when, you know, children were just seen and not heard, where the wealth gap was just huge, and children who were in wealthy families who could afford a governess and nannies would receive a certain education, and yet she wanted to reach every child. Like she said, maybe every you know, the soul of every child should be awakened to delightful living. And her passion was her phrasing was, she was doing it all for the children's sake. And that wasn't just the select few, but that every child, whether they were destined for factories and the coal pit in the Welsh villages, or in Bradford in the schools where they were able to get books into, or if it was wealthy homes that were hiring governesses and the PNEU, whatever, everything in between. She said every child is a born person and is able to connect with the world and communicate what they hear, see, and believe. And so that in its time was revolutionary, but sadly, it's still revolutionary today. I call it an upside down, inside out educational approach, because traditional education says, let me spoon feed you what you need to know to get the grades to graduate. Whereas what the Charlotte Mason philosophy is, says, let me open up a world to you, and then you get to tell me what it means to you. And you get to tell me what you've heard, what you've seen. And that is mind blowing. And I feel if after, you know, 20 years of being a mum, whatever, I'm still unpacking what that means to me and my children and the others that families that I work with. It's just incredible. And it's not an overnight thing. You can't just, read a blog post and think you know what you're doing. I think decision, you kind of have to step right into it, don't you? It's like, I'm going to wade in this water. I'm going to figure out how to do this. And it is worth it. It's definitely worth the time of reading and researching and finding community and walking it out.
Yeah, I love that. And you talked about that in the book, kind of like where you were talking about spoon feeding. And I loved that because you titled that section Laying Out a Feast of Learning, which is obviously, my curriculum's a dental feast. So that's my favorite metaphor. And it's what I use this all the time when I'm trying to explain this to parents. What's my role? What's the student's role? What are we actually doing? And what you were talking about, where our traditional system really is spoon feeding. And that's creating just a generation of passive learners that have no interest or excitement because I don't care. I don't want to hear what you think is important.
And they don't remember anything. I mean, I don't remember my history class from when I was 14, 15 years old. I don't, you don't remember anything because of the method that is used. And that's sad. All those years.
Yes. Right. And so can you just kind of, for people who aren't familiar with this kind of metaphor, explain what you were saying here about like the dinner and the differences between the two? I just love that. I love that picture because it just makes it so, that's what that means. Okay, great. Like, it's so simple.
Yeah. So I write about this in the book. I talk about, imagine yourself coming to the dinner table and your children are there and there are lots of dishes available. So there are various, we talk about the feast. I think the feast can be very small for younger children and gets larger as they get older, but there are a variety of dishes at the table, and you sit down with your family and then you start to pick up a spoon and you feed a child and you tell them, so say if it's chili, you say, this is chili. I want you to put it in your mouth. It's going to be slightly spicy. This is the texture. When you swallow it, this is what you're going to feel like. You're going to love it. And there's this kind of like this predictive, already set, standardized answer of this is what it will do to you. This is how you will feel about it. And then you do it again with another dish. Whereas the completely turn that on its head, the Charlotte Mason philosophy and methods, what they do is I think I talk about cooking the meal together and sitting down at the table, welcoming everybody around, and you throw the napkin on your knee and you say, tuck in, like, what do you want to eat? And then tell me what you think. And so they get to try it and they get to say, I like this one and this is why. And somebody goes, oh, I didn't like that. That wasn't the same for me. And I'm going to try it with this one. And there's this discussion and this conversation going on. And it's the same table, same meals often, maybe served up on a different way. But the way we approach that, so you still might have history, geography, science and math, but actually our approach and how we see the child, how we view the child and how we view that particular subject is the difference. It completely turns it on its head. And yet it's just those simple adjustments, which I think so many people can probably apply in their homeschool, whether they call themselves Charlotte Mason educators or not. So many of her methods. And that's what I'm finding, Julie, is that the response of the book in the States at the moment, because we haven't quite got it here in the UK, as I was telling you earlier, but the response to the book in the States at the moment is people are reading it from loads of different educational backgrounds and saying, oh, we do these things already, or this is so simple to add into my Waldorf education or into my classical way of doing things. And so they're starting to bring in those threads, which is so exciting. I'm sure that is for you too, that her ideas go beyond the walls of our community.
Yes. Oh, wow. Yay, that's exciting. Because what's going to happen as they start these little threads is they're going to realize how amazing this is.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah.
I'm completely in there. I love that you started out with kind of like raising humans, like the children as born persons, her first principle, because I think, we can focus in on the how, and there's so many people teaching, okay, you do this and you teach it this way, and then that makes it Charlotte Mason, and you lose the whole big picture. And I'm constantly telling people, get out of the how swamp and renew your mind with the why.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? What's the big picture? Why does she say to do these things? And I think so many parents, it comes down to the lack of control and the fear and the faith that it takes to release some of that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? You talked about in the beginning about like pulling up like the flower, like, is it growing? And we.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. I mean, I think within parenting and mothering, control is a huge thing that we have to deal with as our children, just in our children just growing up and growing. But within the educational setting, we rightly feel the responsibility for what we've taken on. Okay. So we're saying, okay, we're not putting our children into the traditional education system. I'm going to take on that responsibility. And that is it's a noble calling, and it is a serious responsibility. But what comes with that is it can be this sense of, am I doing enough? Are they keeping up with whatever? I don't know, this image of whatever the keeping up thing is. I'm like, keeping up with who? And, those questions of should I do this? Could I do that? And they become often the focus of your energy or cause of anxiety, rather than drawing out delight in their learning and putting that energy and time into creating an atmosphere of joy and, finding living resources that bring delight. And so what we are, the born person approach ties in, it works hand in hand with the masterly in activity chapter, which then also works hand in hand with the living books, because they all come together. If you trust the child, then you can stand back. If you trust the method, if you trust the process of education, which is our children drawing knowledge from living ideas, it's all in there. It all ties together, but they have to work together. So you can have a library full of beautiful living books that you've selected from somebody's list, but you are still quizzing your kids, and you're still stressing about, have I got through it all in time, and are they really grasping, or you're finishing their sentences, or they're trying to narrate and you're correcting them. It takes, if you're doing that, then you're losing the whole point of that living resource. The whole point is that Charlotte Mason said, the science of relations is allowing your child to connect with the living resource, book, idea, art, painting, whatever. Don't get in the way. So we have to stand back and allow them to fully hear what the author wants to say, or fully see what the artist has painted, or fully hear what the composer has done for us. And we set up that. We are masterly in the way we create an environment, set up resources, plan, all that kind of stuff. But we are inactive in our interference of their learning. So Charlotte Mason says, you can get in the way when you start lecturing and you start answering the questions for them. It doesn't do a thing. You might be able to tick a box and say it's done, but have they actually found delight in that learning? Has it gone into their mind gallery? Has it made a connection with them? If not, you might as well go and do something completely different. But I also acknowledge that this doesn't come overnight. And that's what I try to do in Modern Miss Mason, is really use story and analogy and trying to help people to grasp that this is, yes, it's a big concept, but it's actually really simply implemented. And it is about, I say right at the beginning of the book, through, with every conversation I have and everything, every coaching call, I can hear it. Every mother is just calling out for confidence. And it's that confidence that enables you to stand back. It's that confidence that stops you from worrying about, are they keeping up? It's that confidence that enables you to enjoy your children and enjoy being a home educator, which is and should be a delight.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And I love too that you're talking about, I think a lot of that confidence comes from the mother learning for herself. And I love that you included like mothers who water their own gardens, because we can, I was going to read what you wrote. You said, it can be easy to lose focus on ourselves when we are so focused on others. We never have to feel guilty about investing in our own soul, for in doing so, we are overflowing into others as a result. And I think a lot of that burnout, especially like this time of year, the winter, like the newness of school has worn off, the newness of the holidays. And now it's like, wow, May's way out there. Like, how are we going to make it through here?
Well,
it's cold.
We go till July here. So, we don't finish till July, and we just take 6 weeks off. So yeah, but I get that. I can hear that in people. I can see some of the stuff that's going on. People are getting tired and they need that fresh impetus. But actually, if we are continuously, if we have a rhythm of input into our own mind and soul and body, which Charlotte Mason talks about, then we can, I'm not saying you don't get tired. I'm not saying we don't need to press pause and take a break, but we can very quickly, again, find the joy and find the delight in learning. But it's when you get...
That's a great thing for that.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's when you get to the end of yourself, when you're absolutely done. And that's when I'll often get an email, somebody saying, I want to quit. Bless them.
So, so what do you say when people email you that and say, I'm done, I want to quit, I'm at the end of my rope?
My two initial pieces of advice when you feel like that is you need to pause or pivot. So something has to change, or you need to just stop completely and take as long as you need to reassess. Sometimes if it sounds more dramatic than actually what is happening, and depending on your personality. So some people have this drama moment, like, I'm I'm looking for school places. I'm da da da. And then you thought,
yes, I'm going to chase that bus down when it comes down my street tomorrow.
Right, right. And people will yell at their kids, you know. And then for 8 hours, I'm like, how's it going? And I'll chase up with the mum and they're like, oh, it's fine. I'm fine now. You know, it can be, honestly, it can be everything. It could be the time of the month. It could be the perimenopausal. It could be to do with the personality. So, but genuinely, whatever the reason, if you feel like that, pause or pivot. So you either stop and say, hey, we're going to take 2 days off, or we're going to take a week just to play, just to sleep a bit later, and you need some time to reflect. And it's pulling everything back. Remember what your why is, like you were saying. Like, what is your why? What's your reason for doing this? And what are the, looking for the roots or even the very clear things of why is this happening? And sometimes it's genuine things, like a child is struggling. Maybe they've got a learning difficulty. Maybe there's some neurodiversity in the household. Most households have that. You know, maybe there's a real situation going on that you just need to attend to, and just give that the time and attention for a little while, and then get back to whatever it looks like. And I think you can strip back and rebuild. And when it's really feels severe, and that, you know, get people alongside you, find someone to talk to about it. I think sometimes it's just a case of pivot. So you just need to change direction a little bit. And so sometimes I think it's these small adjustments that get you back on the track. I remember hearing Bob Goff talk about having a helicopter lesson, and the pilot, he was in the driving seat, whatever, and the pilot was said about, we're going to go right, and his reaction was to do it like a car, you know, to turn the wheel or the steering, I don't know what all the terms are, but to turn it severely in the direction of where it was supposed to go. Well, it sent the plane or the helicopter totally off course. And they're like, no. And the instructor said to him, it's just like 1,000 tiny movements that get you on the right track to where you need to be. And so it's this little inching. And I think sometimes when people feel under pressure, they're like, I'm done. I'll often say, okay, if you could change one thing, what would you change? And sometimes it's a case of, you know what, we've been trying to do Latin and I am not loving it. No one is loving it. I'm feeling like I should do it because so-and-so does it. So I'm like, okay, we're going to get rid of Latin. Let's just get Latin off the list. And suddenly their countenance changes and they're like, okay, can I do that? I'm like, of course you can do that. You can do what you want. Come on, girl, take the Latin out and live your life. And just sometimes a tiny adjustment of somebody giving them permission. Like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do, you know, a nature walk every day. If you don't want to, you can do it on a Friday afternoon, or you don't have to go to every club and so pivot is just that, what can I take out or adjust or just pause on for a moment that will actually bring that freshness and life back. So I think those kind of things are really helpful. Just some small reflections rather than throwing the baby out of the bathwater and suddenly enrolling your kids in school. Just look at, you know, do I need to stop and reassess and rebuild, or can I make 2 or 3 adjustments that actually get us back in the right direction again?
Yeah, that is such great advice. I love that. And I think part of it, you know, if no matter what, pause. And in that reflection, you can pick some of those pivots, but you have to sometimes silence the chaos that's happening before you can actually hear going, okay, let's assess here. Like, what's the damage control kind of thing, you know? And then I love just those small changes, because oftentimes it might not be, I'm quitting, I'm sending the kids to school. It might be, I got to buy a whole new curriculum, we got to change everything we're doing. And like, it becomes this huge monumental change. Your kids are like, what's happening? You know?
I remember I had one friend who's been homeschooling for many, many years, but in the early years, I would always know when she wasn't doing great because she would suddenly be selling all her curriculum. And then she would everything. She'd sell it all, and then she'd be like looking for something else. I'm like, "How's it going?"
Yes, I've been there. I am guilty of that. I have a lot of times, I will admit too. So I think, you know, just keeping in mind, just like what little things can we change? And I think that's kind of key for the whole archery philosophy too.
Yes,
it's just
absolutely
these little moments. I think of them as like, I'm these little grains of sand that I'm adding into my children's life, these little seeds that I'm planting here. I'm not trying to get quick results, quick growth. and that comes down to that faith and that confidence piece as well.
Yes.
I love this chapter. So, at the beginning here, again, we're talking about the children as persons, kind of laying that foundation. And then you go into like what I call like the kind of foundational methods here. Wrap your mind around these things and the whole thing will become easier. Narration, right. Living books, nature study. I use morning time, but you call the chapter like cultural capital, and I call them like beauty subjects. If you can start with these things and get your mind wrapped around them, then, because I think there's so much research now and there's thank the Lord, right? We have all this access to all her writings and all these things that we didn't have before, but the whole body of research can become overwhelming. Or I'm like, okay, start with trying to narrate something. Start with changing that textbook out for this living book. Take these little simple steps here. So I love that you included those and they're really practical. Like I was saying with the morning time, you call it cultural capital. Can you just kind of give
it's different. It's not morning time. Yeah, that's not cultural capital is a whole thought, it's an approach, a part of our social society, and it's a sociological approach, a sociological thinking. It's from a philosophy many years ago, which is all about life outside of our normal selves. So it can be what we have access to. So I go through the different types of cultural capital in the book at the beginning. And then I tie that into this exposing children to art and culture that might not be part of their normal way of life. And I give some insight into what that looks like in the UK education system. It's actually important in there. So school inspectors here in the UK say that kids need to have access to arts and culture, and how, it's great for their cultural and character development, brain development, all that kind of stuff. And how interesting it is that these ideas are woven into the Charlotte Mason philosophy as well. So often, again, I never saw this in my early years. I've never taught this, but they're often kind of, there is a phrase that I've heard within the Charlotte Mason circles. I can't even remember it. This is how much it's not part of my vernacular, but people group them into something, which is almost kind of like a cherry on the top. And I teach it as in, it has to be intrinsically woven through everything. Yes. So it's not just this additional thing that you might or might not do, but actually when children so I talk about having art around on your walls and playing music in the atmosphere of the home. So it's not just a study. It's not just something you do on a Wednesday morning, but it's woven through the atmosphere of the home. So they're seeing art, they're hearing poetry, they're surrounded by nature. They are, I have art all over the place. And I talk about the story of my childhood having art prints cut out from calendars on the bathroom wall. I wasn't homeschooled, but how that impacted my character and my view of the world. And so these things, I think the arts are often seen as something separate from academic subjects, but my belief is that they need to be intrinsically combined and seen as very, very important and a beautiful part of life. And so, these things can be done every day. They don't need to be just, as something that is tied in and forgotten about. And so that's why I've given a whole chapter to it. I'm very passionate about children being exposed to art, poetry, music. Obviously, nature is a separate chapter. But I have stories in there of the impact on my life. And so I looked at the research behind it all, and it's amazing, really. So, and I think I give examples from people through history, and I mean, there's tons there. But you see the influence on amazing philosophers, writers, poets, actors, artists they have a very academic life, but actually connected with that so much was the place of the arts in their life. So that's what that whole chapter is about. It's actually saying, this is at the heartbeat of the philosophy. It's interesting because Charlotte Mason the classical music stuff didn't really come from her. She had a friend who she discovered played it to her children, and she saw the response and felt how it changed the atmosphere. So she later kind of added that into the PNEU, the programs. But now we know more. We've the research on. I mean, I was the one who was playing Mozart to my babies in the womb because my dad said it was a great idea. I was like, okay, we'll make them clever. Research doesn't show that, but it's a great thing to do. So that's what that whole chapter is about. There's a bit of science in there, a bit of sociology, a little bit of history, and it also then ties into why we study poetry, why we read poetry, why we look at art, and why we listen to music.
No, I really appreciate that too, because I'm passionate about that stuff too. Actually, I teach I'm teaching history at a co-op this year, and I teach 8th graders. And just this week, we're learning about like Sir Walter Raleigh and Queen Elizabeth, and so fun. But I brought in all this like art and music because I'm like, you can't separate out history from art and music. They all go together, and they all influence each other.
Absolutely.
And but the reason I said morning time, because in my curriculum, that's how I put a lot of those subjects. But again, it's not like this is the only time we're going to have poetry, the only time we're going to have music. And I do that at the end of the day too, kind of like bookends, because for me, that fills my heart. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this method. And I think a lot of people, like you're saying, we see it as this cherry on top, and it's like, well, if we have time, we can get to that. And I'm like, no, this is the most important thing. So we are starting our morning with this music, looking at this art, and reading these poems. And that motivates me in the mornings, because like, I want to know more about this stuff. I want to see this stuff. And then it just kind of does set the whole tone for like the rest of the day of, where can we find more beauty in life in these other subjects as well?
Yeah, and I think it is having them as part of the atmosphere of the home and the household. So I think that is, my kids will be in the kitchen doing dishes, and on the boiler kind of above, there's art postcards up there and quotes from poems. So we have it everywhere, and I'm just kind of recognize that it's the stuff like that. I'm not necessarily teaching them while they're doing the dishes, or I'm not quizzing them, who's this artist? But they are. But when Charlotte Mason talks about, she talks about the mind gallery in ourselves, and how we hang these ideas in our mind gallery that can be brought forth in any time in our life. And I love that idea that actually there are things that we might see when we're doing the dishes as an 11-year-old that play a part in our life many years to come. And I can see that in my life from my upbringing and what my parents did for me. And so that's why I'm very much a big proponent of how can you weave it through the home, through the life, through the, and I know many people do it. So it's just very exciting to me. It's, Well,
it makes it seem very doable too. It's not like
it's so easy.
You must know all poetry and all the artists and what time period they were from. And it's just like, just hang some stuff on your wall. Like, that's easy. I can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when curiosity and interest drives you, you're kind of like, oh, who did that one? And you look at the back of the postcard, and then, and I will quiz myself. I will have them all over, and I'll go through them and try and say which one is each artist. And that's my own, my own nerdness.
I'm right there with you. I told my class it's a joke. I'm like, Baroque, when you're out of Monet, Monet, and I just started dying laughing, and they were all staring at me. I'm like, oh, come on, that's funny.
Come on.
And they're like, you're such a geek. And I'm like, I know, I get it. So I love the end of the book where you're talking about leaving a legacy, because this vision mindset is what motivates when you do feel like throwing in the towel or things are going wrong. And so I'd love to just kind of hear the importance of that and why you included it at the end of your book.
Yeah, I mean, the last chapter talking about legacy, and we've just done a retreat for our UK Charlotte Mason community in Ambleside. We came back on Sunday, and
all those pictures.
Amazing group. So we've got a community of over 2,000 families just here in the UK, but we just took about 100 mums came with us, and we call that it was to celebrate the centenary of Charlotte Mason, but we focused on, we called it It's Your Story, because we wanted to make sure that the legacy of the Charlotte Mason philosophy, Kim, was not held with the academics and the so-called experts, which I don't put myself in that category anyway, but it was held with the mothers who are doing the work. So the book ends with a poem that I wrote standing at her grave when I literally did what I said. I put wildflower seeds in the dirt next to her grave. And this idea of this constant reproducing of her ideas through every single individual family. So it will never look the same. Each beautiful, unique family all over the world are the legacy of the Charlotte Mason philosophy, however they're doing it. And so this idea of it's your story. I know on the weekend we focused on people were writing letters to Charlotte and to give to the Armit. We were sharing stories with each other of impact. This is how it's affected me. And so the chapter on legacy is like, you carry this. We get to carry this. We are the ones who are moving this forward. And I don't want, I talk about this on my social media, but I hate it when people say they don't feel they're Charlotte Mason enough. Like, it actually gets me quite upset when I hear that. And I want to fight for those people. I want to stand and go, that is not even a thing. That's not a thing. Yeah. I'm saying that, let's gather the crowds from the corners and from the places where they feel like they're hiding and say, we are the future of this. Our children and our children's children, we get to set this on fire, run with the torch, and we get to make it our own. And that is the beauty of it. I don't think it's watering anything down. It's not dishonoring or disrespecting what Charlotte Mason set out to do. And she said, in Essex Chumley's biography, she said, Charlotte said, I left no recipes behind, but yet so many are, and I've done it. I'm trying to look for the recipe. Tell me how to, how much of this do I need in this and how much? And she's like, she didn't leave any recipes behind. You get to carry this. So we get these beautiful principles. How do you view children? How do you view education? And how are you going to run with that? And so that is the legacy. We are the legacy. Every mother or parent who reads this book, that is the message, that they get to sow the seed and see that reproduce. And that excites me to see how far, how far this will go. Yeah.
I'm like ready to get up on my table and cheer now, girl. Woo! I love it. That was awesome. Are we going to end right here because everybody needs to go back and listen to the last 2 minutes over again. We're having a bad day and just, woo, we are doing this. We are carrying the torch, right? And we're making it our own, which is so important, and not trying to put ourselves, and you talk about this in your thing, in the Charlotte Mason box that we think we are supposed to go into rather than making it our own. Yes. Yeah. So tell us, where can we get the book, and what else are you offering and working on, and where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so 3 main things. You can get the book from wherever you buy books from. If you're in Europe, you go to, I don't know when this goes live, Julie, but hopefully when it goes live, you will have the book. But audio, so audio and Kindle, it's available everywhere. Physical copies.
And you read the audio book. I think that's important. People can listen to your lovely voice.
Right. I do read the audiobook. That was great fun. But the book should be available wherever you buy books from. Order it from your library, get it, whatever. Yeah, I've launched something called the Collective Membership, where I'm bringing everything I do under one roof. So I've got workshops on there, group coaching, a book club, and a room for writers to practice their writing. And that is, the Collective. And then the third thing is that I do a conference, and I'm doing that on the 1st of July, the Modern Miss Mason conference. It is here in England, in Warwickshire. It's a one-day conference, but we will be streaming it this live, so you'll be able to get a streaming ticket as well. Yeah. So, all that.
So modernmissmason.com is where they would find the collective too, or is that a separate
everything
site?
So either leahbowden.com or modernmissmason.com, you will find everything you need, and Modern Miss Mason everywhere else. So but all roads lead to me. I know that sounds really arrogant. All the roads that you were saying, sorry, we'll edit that bit because I'm not arrogant.
I know, you're the exact opposite. No. On Modern Miss Mason, they will find you, but we will link to all that stuff in the show notes as well.
What I was really trying to say is the domain name on my website is both Modern Miss Mason and Leah Bowden. You'll get there in the end. Not every road leads to me.
That's awesome. Well, this has been a delight as always.
Thank
and again,
you.
I'm so grateful for your voice and the work that you're doing. Your book is absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
And I encourage everyone to go get it in whatever form they feel most comfortable with. And yes, keep on carrying the torch, girl, and planting those seeds. I'm so
same goes for you. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.